friends. Welcome to Knox County Schools at Home Summer Edition. My name is Mrs. Sharp, and I teach third grade at Ritta Elementary School. We're going to work together and walk through some information having to do with social studies and the Southern Colonies. Before we get started, let's look at some things you can do if you're having trouble understanding the video. You can turn your closed captions on. You can adjust the playback speed to slow it down. You can consider watching short clips and then pausing and listening and watching them again, or you can ask someone in your house to watch with you, and then you can stop often and talk with them about what you've heard and understand. All right, so up until this point, we've talked about the New England colonies and we've talked about the middle colonies. I'm going to talk to you today about the last set of colonies, the last region of colonies, and those are the Southern colonies. The Southern colonies are made up of Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. I want to give you a couple seconds and I want you to use the map that's over here and I want you to see if you can figure out where those names go and which areas would be labeled with which word. Okay, let's see how you did. So we've got Maryland on top, and then we've got Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Those are the 5 areas that make up the region of the Southern colonies. So when we talk about the Southern colonies, we can look at the geography first. Most of the land in the Southern colonies was flat, and it had lots of small rolling hills. The soil in this region was very fertile, which made it ideal for farming. The summers were long and hot with lots of rain, and the winters are short and mild, very similar to the weather we have here in Tennessee. Southern colonies have the longest growing season, which is why most of the people that lived in the Southern colonies were farmers. That's how they made their living. The farmers in the Southern colonies mainly grew cotton. They also grew rice. They grew indigo, and they grew tobacco. The economy of the South depended on trade of these goods with other colonies as well as Europe. So the farmers made their money, oftentimes lots of money, selling these crops to Europe and to other colonies. Many Southerners lived on small farms out in the country. However, there were large plantations that existed in the Southern colonies, and those were the backbone of the economy in the South. Here's a picture down here of what a plantation house looked like. Okay, notice how big it is. Plantations were like small villages. So not only did they have the house on the land, they also had farms and other buildings where people lived and other areas where they would store things. Many workers were needed to run the plantations. So it wasn't just the person that lived in the home, they had to have a lot of workers there to help them run things because it was so large. To save money, many plantations often used enslaved peoples for their labor. The enslaved peoples worked in the fields, they also worked in the houses, and they worked on the farm. They took care of animals, they cooked and they cleaned, they ran errands, and they oftentimes built other structures that were needed on the plantation. In the Southern colonies, there were very few large towns or cities, so people went long periods of time without seeing anybody else. Plantations were often the center of social life. In the Southern colony of Virginia, they set up the very first elected legislature or form of government, and it was called the House of Burgesses. The elected leaders made laws for the colony, but it was important to note that only white people, white men who owned land, were able to vote on those laws. In the Southern colonies, there were very few schools. Children that lived on the plantations, they were often taught at home. So they had a private tutor that came into their house and taught them how to read and write. Sometimes they would do music lessons or dancing. Children of small country farms, they often did not get an education. So many of them did not know how to read or write. So I've given you a little bit of background. Now I'm going to explain to you what your task is going to be. So you'll see some passages very similarly to this one right here. And then after each passage, there's going to be a graphic organizer. Okay, and so the directions say to fill in the chart using information from the text. So you're going to look at this text about Southern region geography, and you're going to go back in and fill in information about what kind of land there was, information about the kind of climate, and information about the kind of growing season that they had. You're going to do the same thing on the next one. You're going to read through this reading having to do with plantations and labor and agriculture, and then you're going to answer these three questions for me. Where did most of the people live? What kinds of things did they grow? And who worked on the crops? So who were the people that did most of the work? And then lastly, you're going to read this passage, and it's actually 2 slides long. And then you're going to go through and fill out information that you found about community gatherings, about government, and about schools, making sure that you're using the information from the text to give you the information for your organizer. Okay, once you've finished that, then your culminating task or your ending final task looks like this. After I've talked to you about the Southern colonies, you've now gotten information about the New England colonies, the Middle colonies, and the Southern colonies. So I want you to look at the information you've learned about all three of those regions, and I want you to write me a paragraph explaining which region you would rather live in and why. Once you have written your paragraph, then I want you to draw a picture to show what life was like in that particular colonial region. I hope you have fun, and I hope that you're able to put all of your knowledge into your paragraph and into your picture.